Sherry.
am I out of my depth?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Humanist Agenda podcast. This is episode 13, and we are talking about artificial intelligence today. My name is Kenny.
My name is Sherry.
My name is Selena.
And I'm Will.
Okay, so we had a lecture this past week on artificial intelligence at the last HAWA meeting, and this talk was primarily talking about the concept of super intelligent artificial intelligence and some of the implications it has on the world potentially in the next, I think there were some ranges between 50 and 125 years. So maybe we want to start some basic terms that we might be using, and some basic definitions. So I'll let Will give a little bit of an overview first.
Yeah, so I know the lecturer gave his own definitions of intelligence and and artificial, but just go a little further into that, or more just to recap. So basically, I'll leave his definition of intelligence to stand, but basically there are different kinds of intelligence. So, for example, your calculator has a certain type of intelligence. I would call it a narrow super intelligence. So narrow in the sense that it's very specific, and it's not going to be intelligent at any other thing other than what it's specifically intelligent at. So it's only good at math, and it's super intelligent at math because it is way better than any human could be at math.
Yeah. So one example would be that a computer that could play what's that Go game?
AlphaGo.
AlphaGo. Yeah. So
That's actually I wouldn't. So I guess. Oh god, but we're already getting more complicated because I would argue that the two different types of computers that do Go use two different methods of learning. So at first they programmed all of the different moves that have ever been played in history, kind of thing, and just gave it like an encyclopedic knowledge of previous moves in AlphaGo, and then it used that in combination with a little bit of its own narrow intelligence to play the game. But then there was another version of it that was created afterward, and this was explained in the lecture, that didn't really start with any basic information. It just played the game. It was just given a win protocol and a lose protocol, and then it basically just,
it was given a set of rules.
Yeah, it was given the rules and a win protocol and a lose protocol, and then it basically just played a version of itself, and over iterative self-improvement became better and better and better, but without really having to have studied human moves in the first place. So I would argue that some of the process in the second one isn't really, I wouldn't really call it a narrow intelligence, although it's only good at Go. It got there through a process of iteration that is
it's pretty limited in terms of what it can do. So I would view that as narrow intelligence, because if you're going to step up to the next definition of general, that's going to be more like a human being.
But I mean, I wouldn't think of it as narrow in the same sense as a calculator is narrow, because it's like.
But the calculator is not learning. It still requires a human to provide the input for it to do the computation, whereas an artificial intelligence should be able to learn by itself.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that this AlphaGo did learn by itself. So, for example, the calculator isn't teaching itself to get better and better at math over time. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to equate what a calculator does with what AlphaGo does and just say, oh, they're both narrow, they're both the same. I mean, I understand they are both narrow in terms of their ability to perform, literature or write sonatas, they can't do that. Neither of them can do that. But I wouldn't say that they're both the same in terms of their complexity or
sure. But I would, if you were to put it into buckets, I would still call it narrow.
Well, because another thing about this is there are AIs that are very similar to AlphaGo, but that can learn any game. So basically, the fact that like any if you give it any rule set and any win and loss protocol, it will be able to learn and get good at that. So in a sense, like that's kind of general. So that's kind of like it's like a general intelligence applied in a narrow way. And I'm not sure that the terminology I'm using is going to be generally accepted, which is why we were saying before the podcast started, I was a little iffy about making any concrete claims on this subject. But yeah, the fact that it spent a lot of time learning Go doesn't mean that you couldn't have used the same underlying system of intelligence to learn anything else with a similar structure, which in my sense makes it less narrow than a calculator, right? Where a calculator is only ever going to perform the one function that you give it, where the way that AlphaGo works is it can learn to perform any function that fits within a narrow set of parameters.
So that's why it's narrow artificial intelligence.
Sure. Where
Boy,
were we?
am I out of my depth.
Yeah.
Selena and I are just like, yep, don't know.
Like, I'm not saying it's a general intelligence. Like, I'm definitely not saying that.
I would probably view general artificial intelligence as exhibiting human intelligence, or being able to either match human general intelligence, like we're able
Across
to,
a wide range of
correct.
Intelligent activities.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, a calculator more than matches human intelligence in terms of math, right? But
Mhm.
but just because it's not, it's the wide range which makes
Exactly.
something general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess back to just like to try and summarize that if we can, because there was a little area of disagreement I think there. But so you've got intelligence, which is the ability to perform tasks of an intellectual nature. Then you've got, and that's broken up into narrow and general intelligence. So narrow is focused on one task, like a calculator, where general is the ability to take that intelligence and apply it across multiple different areas of intellectual discourse, like language and math and extrapolation and learning and all those different areas, which lecturer did a good job of digging into in the beginning of their lecture. And then you've got super intelligence, which is basically just a level of competence in an area of intelligence that vastly surpasses human level intelligence. So where humans would, by definition, have general intelligence, anything that has the ability to generalize across multiple different intellectual discourses and be much better than the human would have super general intelligence or general super intelligence.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Okay. So we'll start with that as the base definitions and go forward from there.
Okay. So when is Skynet taking us over? So I think as I was listening to the lecture, the one thought that kept popping into my head was around whether the probability of this superintelligence would actually emerge.
Right.
Primarily because I'm just speaking maybe from a very practical standpoint, where a lot of things in the world is driven by economic factors.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little economic drive right now for this general intelligence.
You think?
I think so. When you look across the industry, where are corporations funneling their money
Got
into?
it. Yeah.
It's all into the narrow intelligence space, because
Right.
there's no economic benefit of getting a general intelligence.
No, so I'll agree and disagree with that. So I will agree that the money is currently not being funneled toward general intelligent AI, but I won't agree that the reasoning for that is because they don't feel there's an economic benefit to having a general intelligence AI. I would argue the reason why it's not being funded there is because of the belief that the success in investing in trying to create a general intelligence AI, is so unlikely that it's not worth the investment. But if you had a general intelligence AI, I mean, the amount of things it could do in our society or the problems it could solve would have massive economic benefit to whatever corporation ended up with it first. And that claim is somewhat based on an argument that any general intelligence in a computer form would immediately be a general superintelligence. And the argument for that is because the limit, so we have general intelligence as humans, but we're limited by our memory, by our processing rate, by our mathematical limitations, by any number of things that a computer is not limited by. So if you take any of the super intelligent qualities of any of our existing narrow computational abilities, so like a calculator and like Google information storage and information recovery and all of that, we have super intelligence in every category. The only thing we're lacking is a general intelligence that can access all of those and extrapolate from all of those without needing a human's slow processing to be the middleman. So as soon as you have a general intelligence that's in a computer, it will have access to all of the super intelligences that we already have in a narrow version. And so it'll basically be a human that can do math, like a calculator that has all of the knowledge of everything on the internet and has the ability to generalize between those and thinks at a rate millions of times faster than any human thinks. So even if you assume it's not more intelligent, just imagine how quickly it can it can process information. So if you had a group of scientists in a room for 1,000,000 years working on a problem, I mean that's kind of equivalent to how.
But that's why it's going to be funneled towards narrow intelligence, because you have what are human scientists? Let's pick physics for example. What are they focused on? They're focused on very singular tasks, trying to understand the Higgs boson. They're focused on trying to put their general human intelligence into focusing on this one key study, but they're not able to because our brains are limited, and we have humans. The flaws of humans is we just have so many other distractions in our life, and we have to sleep, etc., etc. But whereas I think the money is going to go into is primarily around the narrow intelligence, so that you can just focus all that AI work on doing more discoveries around the Higgs boson, for example. And it wouldn't require this AI to then also need to know how to compose music or know how to cook in order to be able to focus on how to do that.
Isn't it beneficial though to create all these narrow focuses before you create the general one, because then you can draw from the narrow ones?
So I would argue that by having the general superintelligence, and keep in mind I just made an argument for how general intelligence of any sort in a computer would automatically become general superintelligence. Having a general superintelligence is going to expedite the process of creating narrow intelligences that are good at their tasks. So if your goal is to create a narrow intelligence that can figure out stuff to do with the Higgs boson as efficiently as possible, and you look at the current narrow intelligences that they're working on in that regard and what the limitations are, where they're getting caught up, where they're having problems, well, a general superintelligence would be able to find solutions to the problems preventing that venture from going forward much faster than a group of scientists working on it would be able to, because they would basically be a group of scientists of a human level general intelligence, but with superhuman knowledge and encyclopedic knowledge of everything to do with science, every science textbook ever, like whatever humans are working on, a general superintelligence will be better at. So it's like once you have general superintelligence, anything we're currently working on, it will be better at doing that thing. I can't think of an argument that would suggest that that's not the case. The only arguments are that isn't going to be able to be feasible to create. So my argument in opposition to Kenny is simply that it's not that it wouldn't be hugely economically viable to have one of these things. It's that they aren't investing in it because they don't think that we're going to be successful at creating it, and we'd be more likely to advance Higgs boson, narrow intelligence research by just doing it ourselves, because we'll at least make some progress in the meantime, instead of making no progress for hundreds of years until we finally get this superintelligence that will then answer all our questions. Would you say that you disagree with the argument that a general intelligence is going to instantly become a general superintelligence? Or do you disagree with the argument that a general superintelligence would be much better at everything that humans do than humans are?
From my perspective, I highly doubt the general intelligence is going to emerge.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that.
I don't think, for me, I think where things are going to go is towards the reason why I'm focused on the narrow intelligence, and why I don't think that people are really going to accelerate the general intelligence piece, is because there's just so much more economic value. And
Short-term
I can
economic.
But I can understand your why you think so. You're saying like a general intelligence would be able to kind of piece more things together to maybe accelerate the narrow intelligence piece. But I really do think that this general intelligence, in how you're describing, would not be a general intelligence, because for me, like a general intelligence means it has to be able to match the capabilities of a human being. So it would have to be able to take on other tasks and learn them and apply them. I don't think we're going to get to that point because people are just going to be focused on we got to extract as much economic value out of intelligence and keep things focused on where it needs to go.
I'm not trying. Sorry, I want to pipe in again here. I don't want this to become the Kenny and Will show on this. And Selena and Sherry have a lot of other interesting things that they want to get to. So I don't want to talk for too long on this, but I will make one more point to address that. So one, you have the argument that you don't think a general intelligence is going to exist, or that we're going to be able to create one because of the sheer complexity and the sheer number of things humans are good at, and a lack of understanding of how and why we're good at those things. And I would simply put forward the argument that, unless that basically the brain is a computer, and it's a computer that has already successfully mastered general intelligence to the extent that we understand it. And so therefore, unless you think there's something special about having a brain that's made of meat, or a computer that's made of meat as opposed to other components, then there's nothing suggesting that we can't create a similar computer that performs similar tasks out of other hardware. And heck, even if you do assume that there's something special about having a computer made of meat, well, we could just create meat computers that have super general intelligence AI. So it's not that it's impossible to create. It's just when will we achieve that success? So long as you assume that we're making progress and we're making our computers better and better over time, so long as we continue to make progress in that domain, it will inevitably end up getting to an area where a computer can iteratively self-improve. So go into its own code and make itself better and better and better and better. And obviously the better it makes itself, the better it will be at making itself better. So pretty much all you have to do is get some level of basic general intelligence that can iteratively improve itself. And then it will just improve itself indefinitely, effectively, until it is this super intelligence we're talking about, probably within very short order. And so long as we're making improvements, the only thing that can stop us from getting there at some point is if our civilization goes extinct and for some reason we stop making improvements in technology. So then the question is this coming in 100 years? Is this coming in 200 years? And I don't think it's unreasonable to say within 100 years, at the rate at which we're expanding on our knowledge in this topic, we could have something close to a tentative general intelligence that can iteratively improve itself. And once we get there, we are now at the feet of a general superintelligence that I think will dwarf our capacity in every respect. And the questions are, what would a world like that look like at this point? How are we going to interact with that thing? And how big of a difference will there be between us and it? And I think our inability to react properly to this inevitability, in my mind, is concerning, because imagine you had contact. This is something Elon Musk mentioned once in an interview, and I liked it. He said, imagine you had an alien contact. They said, we are super intelligent, galaxy overlords, we've been around for billions of years, and we're on our way to Earth. Prepare to meet us in 200 years. I feel like the reaction to meeting a super intelligent alien civilization would be a lot larger. If we knew it was coming in 200 years, we would be preparing for that, right? But the fact that some of us acknowledge that in 100 to 200 years, we will be faced with a super intelligent general intelligence in the form of AI and in our computers. We aren't reacting to that eventuality the way that I think that we should be, because it's going to be world shattering.
Really? Why do we need to react to it now? I don't know. It's not here yet, and I feel like humans are pretty adaptable. We'll figure it out. And given the progress of artificial intelligence, there's likely going to be, the wearables market, for example, is increasing. So likely intelligence is going to start integrating into our bodies and things like that. So I think this progression of where humans and artificial intelligence are going to get much closer and have to interact with each other more will likely happen, but I don't think it's going to be like some catastrophic event that we need to prepare for right now.
So we could talk about all the ways in which super general intelligence could be catastrophic, and could be catastrophic in a lot of ways that people wouldn't expect. And it could also be benign and amazing. That is definitely a possibility. But I think the main reason for precaution is because we don't know which of those it's going to be without me going into all the ways it could be catastrophic. And especially the rate at which we regulate things currently. We basically allow a technology to come into existence, and then we look at what the effects are, and then we gather some information, and then a panel or a committee is created to discuss oversight, and then it gets passed, in legislation of some sort, and then there's a committee to make sure that these changes are implemented, and this process takes years. And when you consider what a general superintelligence could accomplish in a couple of years, or what influences it might have in that time span, especially if it got in the hands of bad actors, or even if there was just the accident of programming it wrong. Like here's an example. Okay, it's a doomsday example of an AI that doesn't necessarily have negative intent, which is, I think, something that people assume too often. Is imagine you had a company that really wanted to make paper clips, and for some reason it creates a super intelligent general AI and tasks it with making paper clips, and it just says, make as many paper clips as you can for our company and utilize your intelligence to gather resources as you see fit. And this super general intelligent AI would be so competent at creating paper clips that it would very quickly start turning all of the material around it into paper clips. And then if it realized that people didn't want this, so they were going to try and turn it off, and that would go against its stated objective of creating as many paper clips as possible, it would quickly come up with a solution to eradicate humanity or cage us or whatever, so we couldn't stop it. And eventually when it runs out of other material, it's going to decide that the atoms in our body would be more useful as paper clips than as humans, and everything's paper clips. I mean, it's a very hypothetical example.
I think you're listening to too much Elon Musk here.
I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that's how it works, because you need a human to input data in order for it to get that intelligence, right?
No.
I think the other problem with that is there's a lot of assumptions underlying that, meaning there's a capability of the AI to set up manufacturing, be able to have the resources and control to control mechanical equipment to manufacture. Maybe we might get there with maybe like nanotech far out in the future, but I think if you talk to anyone in manufacturing, even making a paperclip is the most difficult thing in the world, especially at a mass scale level. So I think there's just, to me, like those hypothetical situations, there's so much more underlying assumptions that need to come together for that to actually occur.
And you're assuming that there's that the AI can sense a perceived threat.
Well, that's what general intelligence is. Yeah. So if it wasn't able to predict, the future actions of humans in its surroundings, well, then it's failed at being a general intelligence. So basically, imagine a general intelligence with the capability of a human, and then take all of those narrow elements humans have and make them super intelligent. And now you've got general intelligence with super intelligent capabilities in all the ways humans have capabilities, right?
I just think it would sense the human's intentions regarding paper clips versus regarding ending its life.
I see that as a failure to acknowledge the capabilities of a general intelligence, let alone a general super intelligence. The idea of a general intelligence is that it's a computer that's able to extrapolate across various different areas. So it's able to be task driven, and here's a goal, and it's not going to accomplish that goal in some linear way, the way that our current narrow intelligences would. It would look at all available information and kind of come up with its own unique solutions. The way any human would.
Almost like creativity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really why it's a general intelligence, because it's able to creatively. I'm going to put in quotations because it's not. We can debate whether it's creative or not.
Whether it's true creativity.
Exactly, but
it would mimic human creativity.
Yeah. But I still think there's a lot of underlying assumptions that need to come together for this doomsday scenario to occur. But I think maybe a more pressing doomsday, maybe not doomsday, but downside to artificial intelligence could potentially be some discussions around privacy, and how, for example, AI has been able to potentially be used to create deep fakes and things like that. So maybe you want to talk about some of the impact of.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in the space where we have a general intelligence yet, obviously. No. So we do have human input into the AI. So you have these human actors who maybe have good intentions, maybe don't have quite as good intentions. So we have a few different ways that AI has been incorporated into our society lately. All of the articles that I found were within the last few months, some of them within the last few days. There is a text generator that Elon Musk's company created that...
OpenAI?
OpenAI, yeah, they created...
It's not actually Elon Musk's company. It was like backed by him financially, and then he disassociated himself with it.
Oh, I didn't know he disassociated himself with it.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a few people that have funded this, but it's kind of a collective.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Apologize.
Oh no, sorry.
I'm very limited in this knowledge of AI stuff. Okay, so OpenAI created a text generator, and they're able to input some information saying like, okay, you're going to create an article about unicorns existing. And so this text generator would create this whole news article where they have quotes from people, and it's this whole article on finding unicorns. And so they created this text generator that looks like human speech, so it can create human language. And they were worried about putting it out to the public because they're worried about people using it for malicious intent. So things like generating fake news, stuff like that. So they didn't actually release the software. They just released a smaller model of the software, and then only part of their results, because they think that people could use this text generator to develop text a lot quicker. So the people who want to use it for good won't be able to use it. Sorry.
Yeah, but one of the challenges that OpenAI is trying to address is basically, people can potentially use AI for nefarious activities, and what they're trying to do is really kind of open it up so that people have access to AI technologies, with the hope that you can combat AI with AI.
Yeah.
So really so let's say someone was able to create an AI to create fake news. Potentially you could use AI to also detect that fake news.
Right.
The Pentagon is actually devoting millions of dollars to figuring out how to detect AI. So altered images and stuff like that. So they're actually putting money into figuring out what is fake. Because there have been a lot of different things that have come out. So there's a website called This Person Does Not Exist. I know it went pretty viral, where it's an AI that's generating new faces, brand new faces that have never been seen before. And they look like photos of people, but those people don't exist. And there's also deepfakes, which is, there was this person who created this software for people to use, where you input a bunch of information about, let's say, a celebrity. And so the AI will learn how to see the celebrity from all angles, and you could put that celebrity into a video. So originally, like all things, it was created for porn.
Or
so a
politician.
Celebrity, yeah. So a celebrity was, superimposed into this porno video. There was also a video about Trump having the features of the Chinese president and talking about fire and fury that he was going to rain down on Korea.
Right.
So there are ways that you could superimpose somebody onto a video. So you want to know if that's happening, especially because you could potentially ruin someone's career. If it was a celebrity who got put into a porno, then that's like their sex video now, right? So it could ruin their career.
Or think about the common person. I mean, what type of resource would a common person have to fight a deep fake video? Mm-hmm. So I think there is a bit of an arms race that when it comes to AI, especially with different countries. And I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns that we should probably have some visibility around, because different countries are starting to enable AI to potentially do nefarious things. And how do you detect that? How do you combat that? I think is a big open question right now. And obviously, certain governments are spending money on trying to accelerate the advances in AI detection and combating some of these deepfakes and other ways of potentially using AI to either harm an economy or harm another country.
And you have a lot of questions around who owns the data that is garnered by the AI. So let's say you have a Google Home system where it's recording certain things, it knows what you're ordering online, that sort of thing. It has all that data on you. Who owns that data? Who gets to use that data? Those are also privacy issues that people are concerned about.
I think to do with what you're saying about deepfakes and whatnot, and creating fake videos that in the future will be just as convincing as a real video. I think the real issue with that, it'll affect some celebrities. I doubt it will affect many individuals, because who wants to invest resources into manipulating me saying something, right? But I do think it will have massive influence on public perception of things of importance, because like political issues and whatnot, or companies trying to advance their objectives and whatnot. So yeah, if you can make a politician look like they said something bad and they're your political opponent, and if that information gets out there and 90% of people see it and talk about it, and only 20% of people end up realizing that was a fake video, well, that can have massive influence. So in a sense, I think that'll cause a problem for our political system. But I have an interesting thought about use of AI in our political system to actually more effectively produce results for a democracy than is currently being achieved by politicians. Because politicians are effectively, they're supposed to be the voice of the people, right? They're supposed to, as effectively as they can, produce benefits for the people based on what the people say they want as benefits. Right? But the problem with this system is corruption and individual, desire to advance their own needs. And I think that if you could replace political actors with artificial intelligences that are supposed to perform the same role, I think you could eliminate a lot of that bias. So imagine a system where you have artificial intelligence that will listen to what the public says they want, right? Based on the data that gets input from polling and whatnot. And then it will have the required intelligence to be able to look at the different options available, the different political options available to accomplish said, desired goal, and to weigh the outcomes of each of those and see which one aligns best with the public interest. So instead of having Trump at the head saying, okay, the people say they want this, we can nuke this country as one option, we can do this as one option, and then you leave it to Trump to decide which one of those three options is going to best achieve what the public wants. Wouldn't it be better to have some kind of general intelligent AI, ideally, or even potentially even a narrow AI that's given that objective to weigh the options and spit out the solution based on what the public say they want the outcomes to be, or even just to have that as a filter. Right, so have that as an additional layer, so you're not removing humans from the process entirely, but when the president says, I want to build a wall because it will do all these things, well, then you can just defer to the AI that looks into it and goes, well, no, it's not going to accomplish those goals. It's going to cause these problems, and this is not aligned with what the public is saying they want.
I mean, that's the benefit of AI. I mean, a lot of industries right now are using AI almost like a recommendation engine to help guide them to a decision. Not necessarily, It doesn't, at least right now, it doesn't take a lot of the control away from humans. Eventually, I think people will become more comfortable with the decision making of AI, but a lot of times right now, AI is kind of the recommendation engine for decisions.
Yeah, because it eliminates bias, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it provides insights that humans can't provide because it has access to so much more information and computational power.
That's super interesting. I think about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about different industries using digital twins, for example, essentially like mimicking different processes or things like that to then figure out if I change what will happen to C,
Right.
and they'll just test each hypothesis, thousands
In like a
of-
virtual
in
simulation.
a virtual
kind of-
simulation
yeah.
to figure out what is the best outcome,
Right.
and then give the recommendation. And usually it's processes where it would just take a human being so much time and knowledge
Right.
to figure out what the right solution would be.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that Lynn talked about in his lecture was, how would you feel if you walked into a doctor's office, a lawyer's office, something like that, and there was an AI that you had to speak to in order to get your problems resolved? And I think that kind of goes along with, if we put AIs in power to solve our problems, would people be comfortable with that?
Probably not initially.
Yeah, definitely not initially.
Yeah.
Would we even take into account what the AI is saying, or we would just ignore it to get our own agendas across? Do you know what I mean? Because I don't think Donald Trump's listening to any kind of intelligences. So
But people believe he is, I think. Some people. I don't know.
debatable. But so he wants to build this wall, and it's his grand scheme and all of that. He's not going to listen to all these other things. I think that we're not going to initially maybe trust the AI.
People believe that Trump is. Well, the people that support Trump believe that Trump is informed. At least some of them believe that he is informed. And whether or not that information is coming from his intelligence agencies or his own gut intuitions, which are super reliable, or whatever else they think, that's just a disagreement over, what we think is effective at producing good solutions. It's like, is it Trump's intuitions? Is it his advisors' intuitions? Because some people believe it's just one intuition versus another, and that the information the advisors have are kind of irrelevant. Where I would like to think that we've become so used to trusting technology to answer our questions and solve our problems, that the more that we use it to do those things, the more comfortable we become with the idea that, technology knows better than humans do in a lot of situations. Where initially, when technology came out, I don't think people would have had that, but I think, it's a growing intuition people are getting that, okay, well, if I actually want to know the answer to this, let me Google it. My friend says this, my other friend says this, well, let's just solve this with what Google has to say.
But Google is created by these websites that people make. So people are making the websites with the information. So you Google it, and then you access the information from the humans.
Well, in a lot of ways, that information is being collected by artificial intelligences or by mechanical processes or simulations. So it's like, we're creating websites to present information, but not all of that information is coming from humans directly.
Actually, majority of information from Google is through an algorithm, through an AI.
Yeah, but she's not talking about what is presented to you on Google. She's talking about who actually created the links you're clicking on. I think she's saying ultimately
you're going onto the websites, yeah.
And the websites are human created. So I know that
right, but an AI is still
filtering those websites
and figuring out the relevance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you're right. That's a good point. There might be 10 websites on the subject, all human created, right? And Google is picking out the one that's most likely to be relevant or accurate. So there's already a lot of websites that are just falling to the wayside due to Google's algorithm saying, no, the humans that created this and are presenting this information don't know what they're talking about.
But the problem we have right now with either false information or fake news is because other platforms like Facebook, their incentives is not around the accuracy of the data. Their incentives are structured around how many clicks. Right. And what gets the most clicks is if something reinforces your own biases, right?
Or makes you angry, actually. Yeah. There's a lot of discussion that over what keeps you on a chatting platform or in a comments thread is actually how many people you're encountering with opposite polarizing views to yours that you are inclined to debate with. So no matter who you are, no matter how polarized and crazy your views are, there are algorithms that are pairing you with people who are either going to have crazier views or who have regular views. And so it's really just facilitating a massive, combative atmosphere and giving people the impression that, there's a lot of other people who disagree with, a lot more people that disagree with them than there actually are. Because even if there's only a few people disagreeing with them, those people are being matched with everyone to instill that polarized discussion. But back to what you were saying earlier about the use of, this person does not exist. Well, I think a solution to us accepting what these AIs have to say is unfortunately, we have to trick our own human psychology by creating human sounding, human looking avatars to present the information, right? So if it's just a computer that just types it out, you might be not trusted as much. But if it comes on your screen as a face of an attractive female who has a soothing voice and talks to you with perfect tonation and everything like that, I think the human part of our brain is going to identify with that more as a human than as the information actually coming from this technology.
Yeah, so this would be a good point to the trolley problem that I...
Okay.
So there was a study that was done. I'll link it in the show notes. But basically, to summarize, if those who don't know about the trolley problem, let's say you're in a streetcar, it's going down the rails, and you have to make a choice whether to switch the tracks or not. If you don't switch a track, you'll plow through 5 people. If you do switch the track, you'll only plow through 1 person, and you have to make a decision. Do you actively kill 1 person or 5 person? And that's
passively kill 5 or actively kill 1?
There are variations though of do you kill 5 people or do you kill your mother?
Right.
So there's more at stake than just there's 1 person and then there's 5.
So another way of kind of viewing as well is you are going down this rail and there's a really big man in front of you. If you knew that if you push this really big man, actively push this big man, and he got killed, but he will jam the brakes and you'll prevent killing 5 people, would you push this person? So what these people want to do is kind of change
their intuitions.
Basically, change the narrative to incorporate AI or robotics and how we would react to an AI. So by giving a backstory around the AI to make it seem like the AI had emotions or feelings, people were hesitant to push the AI off of
to pull the plug,
whatever it might be, right? To actively kill the AI.
Mm-hmm.
So, which to me supports your point on, if you actually put human features and or even have the AI may not actually have feelings, as long as it's able to replicate feelings.
Humans will identify with it.
Humans would identify, and we would be more inclined to view this AI as a living being.
Yeah, actually, back to what you're saying about the trolley problem, I think that actually touches also on what I was saying about having AIs run our political system. I think the trolley problem highlights how human intuitions are fallible in some senses. So what we intuit is the right decision, or not even what we intuit is the right decision, but is what we intuit as a decision we would want to make in that situation, isn't always the same as what we intuit the right situation to be. So we all would acknowledge that 5 people dying is worse than 1 person dying. But when you have a human in the cab staring at the lever, do I pull this and choose to kill that 1 person? They might fail to make what society would deem as the right call in killing 1 over 5 because they don't want to be personally held intuitively responsible for that death of that 1 person. Where if you were to automate that with AI decisions and we just input, here is what we value. We value human life, kill as few humans as possible, and don't let human fallible intuitions negatively affect your effectiveness at killing as few people as possible. Then maybe AIs would actually be better at achieving our goals than humans would be. So where you have a human politician who's like, well, there is some diplomatic solution that that is counterintuitive to myself and to the rest of the voting public, but something we're really okay with doing is just going to war, right? And if we just go to war, it will be the other solution, but it will kill lots of people. It will be horrible, but our intuitions don't properly, value thousands of deaths. It's just a statistic, right? But it really doesn't like the idea of changing some policy or providing aid to a dictator, So if instead of having humans make that decision with our faulty intuitions, if instead we just said, okay, well, here's what the public wants, and let the AI decide what solution is going to achieve that as effectively as possible, instead of having human politicians who are accountable to the public's intuitions. That might be better.
But it's going to be interesting if one day this scenario ever happened where an AI made an active decision to harm another person.
How we would view that?
How I would actually think from a legal standpoint how that would be viewed. I think that would be a very challenging case, because ultimately, who is responsible in that case? Is it the programmers, or is it?
I think you should set up a body.
Or is it the AI? Can you convict an AI?
Well, set up a body of people or a committee that is going to evaluate the coding on these types of AIs that are given a certain amount of freedom, right, to potentially cause harm, obviously in the effort of avoiding greater harms. And the committee will decide which codes they think are appropriate. And then if anyone wants to contest a decision made by an AI, it would then be the committee that approved the code that led to that AI doing that thing that would have the legal responsibility, and obviously they would have insurances and whatnot protecting them as an organization. But they would have to go to bat to back their decision in allowing that code, and that legal process would protect the companies producing these AIs that are actually producing good in society, with the exception of these little hiccups. It would prevent them from deciding not to implement this due to fear of litigation, while also allowing iterative improvements to the laws around what codes are allowed to be enabled. In these
I think
AIs.
it's just going to be really tricky, because if I were the family of the victim, right, I'm going to fight for its negligence,
punishment and justice.
It's negligence, and I would do everything in my power to prove that AI did not make the right decision, right? And try to, and then how do you have to trace? I mean, you can look at the past data to try to figure out. I mean, there's so many. I think it's going to be quite complicated, a complicated case. I don't know. If it ever, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a rare occurrence if it ever does happen.
But I mean, I think despite it being rare, like the events themselves being rare, that AIs do things that make us unhappy, I don't think the rarity of these events is going to prevent it from being quite frequently discussed in our society. Because all it takes is one event, one self-driving car somewhere in the world that decides to kill a mother and her child instead of a group of 50 men or something.
Well, it kind of did happen in, I think, Arizona, possibly Phoenix, because I was actually in Phoenix, and this was kind of a big thing that happened. They kind of removed all of the self-driving cars, because I was actually hoping to sit in one of them.
That's too bad.
But anyways,
that would be really cool.
I know, but they took it all out. But basically, I mean, a self-driving car hit a cyclist.
Right.
Because it didn't recognize bicycle.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like I was saying, I don't think that the lack of frequency of these events is going to prevent them from having a large impact in our social discussion and our moral discussion as a society.
But what's interesting is actually when you look at the data, artificial driving cars have decreased the number of accidents their accident rate is much lower than if a human drives.
Well, I think at some point it definitely will get there. Interesting, there was very recently a study came out contesting that data. So the original data that was collected to suggest something like 40% less accidents resulting in airbag deployment. That's in cars with self-driving features activated versus the times when they weren't activated. And there was like a control group of like before these cars were allowed to have these systems activated, so originally that study concluded 40% less airbag deployment. But then another independent review organization recently reviewed that study and found problems in the data and in the methodology of that. So there were some vehicles had incomplete data, and what the study did was it took that incomplete data and made assumptions that were extremely favorable toward the automated driving, and then posted the results in a way that suggested it wasn't actually. So when they reviewed it, they found that there was actually a slight to moderate increase in airbag deployment currently with that technology. Now, technically, the time it took between the original study and the review of that study, like 2 years has passed in advancement in that technology. So I doubt that's any more representative of the effectiveness of these systems, because they are getting better and better and better. But I don't know, that's an interesting point. But I definitely think that right now they're beneficial. I would say on mass they are probably adding more benefit than detriment, and it'll only continue to get better. But the way we perceive that morally isn't accurate. You know, if it saves 1,000 accidents, stops 1,000 accidents from happening, but causes one, people are going to focus on the one that was caused.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe we don't trust it because it's like one full car of AI versus what we have now is we've got cars that can reverse park by themselves, or brake by themselves and that sort of thing. Like, so we've got these parts that are in the car, so it's still human driven, but the parts are AI versus a whole car that's AI. Do you think that we just don't trust that car and we're like, oh, I know that car's gonna get in an accident?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
So like we trust that these cars that we drive now that have parts that are AI, like we trust in those parts. So we trust that it's gonna brake,
right,
or that it can reverse park into this parking spot without hitting something.
And better than I can. You know, that's why I use it. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Versus there's this car made up entirely of AI that we don't trust because we know it's gonna get into an accident because it's not human operated at all.
I mean, it's also the current level of the technology. I mean, if there's anything weird about the road, like often they might repaint lines to kind of move people over because of construction. I mean, maybe like a couple of years ago, I mean, AI has a difficult time figuring out what happens when roads are under construction.
Right.
And that's where, you know, a human needs to take over to kind of take over the decision making. But I would say it's very likely in the long run, right? As years go by and AI softwares improve, they're just going to get smarter to figure out and navigate these roads. And I think that's when the confidence level starts to increase with people and allowing cars to drive by itself. But I think at this point, there's a lot of mistrust because of some of the flaws. I mean, you can just go on on like YouTube and just Google, you know, self-driving cars getting into accidents, and there's always a photo or a video of
car on fire.
Doing something that it shouldn't be doing, that, you know, a normal human would look and see, oh, I would have known to do this, but the software is not at the point right now where it would completely replace a human being's decision making.
But we're also not seeing all the situations where the car did something we wouldn't have done.
Exactly.
Like see a car 3 ahead braking, and because we only see the car in front of us, where it has radar that will bounce off the ground and track the motion of the car in front of the car, and so it can detect accidents that are imminent, you know, that we wouldn't have been able to see, and start braking, where the human goes to take control of the wheel. Oh, why is my car braking right now, right? And then seconds later, you see the pile up happen in front of them that they just got saved from. Yeah, but I mean, I asked this question to a lot of people. You know, if you knew that, you know, 1 in 1,000 trips you would get into an accident if you were driving, and if you knew that 1 in 10,000 trips you would get into an accident with an AI car driving you, there's still a lot of people that, given those statistics, say, oh, I would be terrified to be driving in an AI-driven car, and I would rather drive it myself. So I don't know if that's a failure of intuitions or a failure of mathematical statistical understanding on the part of the people I've asked this question to. But
humans like to be in control.
I was just thinking that.
And if you think about an airplane, right? I mean, you're giving up your control of the vehicle at that point. That's why there's certain people that are just afraid of flying, even though it's one of the safest forms of transport.
And Lynn mentioned during his talk that pilots only control the plane, or they only physically are driving the plane for 7 minutes of the flight.
Yeah.
And my
takeoff and landing.
It's already AI, pretty much.
Yeah, my father-in-law used to be a pilot, and so I was talking to him about this the other night because I heard that statistic, and he was saying, like you still need humans to like monitor the equipment and stuff like that, but you're really only physically driving it for about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, if on a plane, you need a human to take over if something goes wrong. But the rest of the time, when you're just cruising, what's the pilot to do?
Yeah.
Just let the computer do it.
Interesting job. Never thought about that.
I asked him if he ever gets bored, and he said no, because there was always like equipment to look at and stuff to do. But
A lot of flashing lights to entertain the pilots.
yeah,
So, yeah.
and they tell stories apparently and stuff like that, so they don't get bored. But I would probably get bored.
Mhm. What other topics that were we looking to discuss from the lecture?
Well, I don't know. Does Mars need AI?
Well, okay, here's my thought, because Lynn talked about how humans are not built to survive for space travel and that sort of thing, which makes sense. Like our physical capabilities wouldn't take us that far. So do you think that we might first populate Mars with AI or machinery before we even try to go there?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I like that that the speaker acknowledged. Well, one, the beauty of human life and human intelligence, and the need for us to continue to exist into the future, and how it's necessary for us to start colonizing other space to the extent that we can in order to facilitate our survival. But ultimately, we are talking about to facilitate human survival, right? And I think it's important to first acknowledge why it's important that humans survive as opposed to AIs survive into the future. Because yes, we are squishy, meat bags that have a lot of physical requirements to sustain ourselves. We're very inefficient intellectual systems, both in terms of our intellectual capacity and in terms of our upkeep. We use a lot of resources of our environment, and we die easily and all of that, and we have many errors in intellectual thinking. So some people might think, well, if AIs are the future, and even if humanity does go extinct but AIs continue to exist, wouldn't that be a better version of the universe? We've just subbed out an inferior intelligence for a superior one, without a lot of the biases and flaws, and without destroying the environments they exist in. And I think, and I will get to your question, I realize I'm not answering it immediately, but I think it's important to acknowledge a big difference between artificial intelligence, even artificial general intelligence or artificial general super intelligence. The big difference between humans and AI is consciousness. And something that wasn't brought up in the talk is whether or not AIs would be conscious. Personally, I see no reason why they would necessarily be. I think it's quite likely that they wouldn't be. And although consciousness as it exists in humanity is mysterious as to why there's consciousness at all, and by consciousness I mean why we experience things. So instead of just solving problems, why there's an experience of solving that problem, why there's an associated emotional, roller coaster, as opposed to just, and obviously our emotions in humanity are meant to influence our actions. But in machines, instead of emotions to influence their actions, we just have protocols, right? Like if X, then Y. But X doesn't have any kind of, or X or Y don't have any kind of correlating emotional experience in that machine. So I think that ultimately AI could do everything we can do. They can colonize Mars, they can do all of that, and they can do it a lot better than we can. But I do think that there's some imperative for us to preserve consciousness, because progress in any domain is irrelevant unless you have a conscious observer to experience it and to enjoy it and to appreciate it. So who cares if there's intergalactic civilizations that get created if there's no consciousness among any of the entities interacting in that civilization? If it's just some domino effect of AIs pretending to have conscious experience living
So
out.
you're just saying, like, what's the point, essentially,
Yeah.
if there were civilizations that were just AI?
We get AI without consciousness. Yeah, I mean, they might end up creating empires and all of that because we programmed them to do that. But if the lights are off in the mind of these AIs, I don't see any purpose to preserving that society over a less efficient human society. I think I would much rather a universe where there were conscious actors who could appreciate the universe. We are the universe's thinking, feeling parts.
Couldn't we program an AI to mimic these?
Mimic. That's what I'm saying. Is we could create a society that mimics our own, or a better version of our society that's entirely AI, but without any consciousness, that's simply going through the motions of pretending to make friendships and pretending to have goals and aspirations. But ultimately, it's just a computer when the lights are off and there's no observer, there's no, phenomenological experience. And I think that would be a sad future, one where humans were replaced by non-feeling, non-conscious AI robots, even if they were better at everything that we do. So the reason I prefaced my answer to you with that is because my answer to your question is yes, AI is better suited for space travel. It's better suited for maintaining a civilization. It's better suited for colonizing other worlds and doing everything. But I don't see any point in having them set up an AI civilization on Mars unless it's ultimately to facilitate humans living and existing on Mars as well. So I do think that we should send AI to Mars first to set up the necessary habitats and requirements for us meatbags to go live over there, but without bringing the human experience there, I don't really see any purpose in the enterprise.
I don't know. I'm so negative about humanity because it's just one of those like, why shouldn't we just make a better version of ourselves with AI and forget about the meatbags? I mean, the meatbags ruined everything.
What do you mean by a better version of ourselves?
So, I mean, if you're going to set up an AI society, mimic the best of humanity in AI, I don't see why that's not a bad thing for the universe to have. And
well, what do you think is the best thing about humanity? Because I think if any answer to that question, what is the best thing about humanity? It ultimately relies on there being a conscious experience. Because you can't say music is the best thing about society. Because music floating through an empty void, never to fall on an appreciating ear. I don't think that music in and of itself has any value or utility other than its ability to influence conscious beings into better emotional states. So I don't think you can pick anything out of what you would classify as the best of human experience, the best of humanity, without some incorporation of conscious experience. So yeah, I'm totally down. I'm totally for improving the human experience through integration with AI. But I don't think that we can replace human experience, or I don't think it would be preferable for us to replace human experience with non-conscious AI. I think you need to bring consciousness along. That's what I mean. I think we need, who cares about colonizing the universe if consciousness doesn't come along for the ride? If humanity doesn't,
Yeah, but if you let's say you were able to duplicate
consciousness,
not consciousness, but the appearance of consciousness. I mean, right? I mean, why couldn't you set some guidelines and some rules around that? I mean,
you could, but what would be the value of it?
There's certain things I feel like we definitely do not want. So, take away impulses like jealousy or
take out addictions and things like that.
Or in Trump's case, genocide of people. So I mean, if you just take out all these impulses that don't really add value in the new world, let's call it the new world with in the AI world, wouldn't that just be a better place for the universe for everyone?
But there wouldn't be anyone.
There would be AI.
But AI isn't
is
a one. That's like saying there'd be lots of rocks. It's like it'd be a great universe for rocks to exist in. But rocks would live their best life in this new universe without humans.
But that's not a bad thing.
That's assuming there's no other intelligent life.
Fair. So if sure. So if you're saying humanity would ultimately end up the way we're going would ultimately end up being bad for other life in the universe, then sure, eliminate us and replace us with some benign AI overlord.
Maybe I'm just being really negative. I just don't feel like what's so special about humanity. Why do we have to survive?
Does anyone else have any reason they might want to throw, or all three of you in this?
No, I like life, living things, not just humanity. And I feel like if humans were to go elsewhere, they would bring other life forms with them. And I don't know that AI would do the same thing.
So yeah, if I could expand on that, I do agree. I think that life is not just human life, because the speaker seemed to have a preference for intelligence, where my preference is for consciousness, and I think conscious intelligence is the ideal, but preserving plant life and preserving nature insofar as animal interactions and ecosystems, I think that's what humans find appealing when they think about eliminating humanity. They want what's best for these other things that they really appreciate, being other conscious beings and ecosystems and other life. But I don't think many people would feel the same way about an asteroid. If we were going to blow an asteroid up versus if we were going to blow up a thriving ecosystem, I think the difference in preference for blowing one up or the other is an asteroid's just a rock. There's no consciousness, there's no life, and that's the distinction. And so I think that humanity, even if you don't like humanity in and of itself, because so far on our planet all that we do is destroy, right? Because all of the ecosystems that we exist in, that we come to dominate, are already in a fine balance. They've been tuned through evolution to be balanced, and mass disruptions in that balance en masse are negative for the life in that ecosystem. Where in the rest of the universe, so yeah, everything on Earth that we touch, we end up hurting more than we help in terms of life.
Nah, I don't agree with that. I don't think we...
Name a couple areas that you think that life is thriving on our planet because of humanity, other than human life.
But your assumption that humans disrupt the ecosystem is like, are you adding a value judgment on that? Because when you say it's bad, I don't think it's bad. Because let's say if you kind of look at evolution of other organisms will disrupt other ecosystems as they evolve and things like that. But we don't classify that as bad. Right?
Well, it ends up being so. Okay, so I'm kind of arguing from your perspective. Mm-hmm. So I assumed your perspective to be that human life was less preferable than a thriving human life is less preferable than a thriving all other life on the planet, right? So yeah, I you're right. There have been other organisms that have caused other life in their ecosystem to go extinct, and then have thrived in that ecosystem
my only
themselves.
point is just around just classifying a judgment on our activities. I don't think everything we do is necessarily bad, but
it's bad for everything we do is bad en masse, on average. Things we do are bad for life, for other life on our planet. Because by the excessiveness of our domination of our environment, we are pushing all other species to the periphery of existence. And that trend is going to continue on our planet unless we make a conscious effort to reverse that process or to amend our behavior. And I do think the reason why human intervention in ecosystems is a bad thing, and by bad I mean it results in the death of or the elimination of the majority of other things in that ecosystem other than human, or other than things that we think benefit us. I think the reason why we have that influence is because everything has been fine-tuned to some kind of optimal efficiency, and a massive disruption will initially throw that off, and sure, it might end up coming to some other kind of balance. But the new balance is going to be human-dominated and not whatever other life used to exist there dominated. And now I don't actually have any value judgment based on that. I mean, I think that human life is more interesting and more valuable by virtue of its intelligence and seeming level of conscious experience than I do think microbes, for example. If we eliminate microbes in some environment, I don't care too much about that. But even to the people that do care about that, I would argue that humans continuing to exist for the same reason Selena just argued is a good thing for the ultimate vision of life in the universe. There's all these dead, barren worlds, and life from our planet isn't going to get to those to be able to spread. Not just human life, but other microbial life that will eventually evolve into more complex life and animal life. I think that it's not going to get there unless we facilitate it getting there. And we're in a unique position. Even if we ourselves are depraved, irrational beings, we're in a unique position to facilitate the spreading of life throughout the universe. And if we go extinct, that's not going to happen. So I like the idea of a future where we spread life to all these other planets and new evolutions take hold. And a billion years from now, there's all these different strains of evolution on all these different planets, and humans have facilitated that. Whether or not we carried those microbes on our boots, or we did it intentionally by seeding planets with microbes that would thrive there, that's all ultimately a good thing.
And we can use AI for that.
We
It
can.
may be all for naught though, because in 4 million years or 4 billion years, isn't there going to be the Andromeda galaxy merging with ours, and then all of our work that we just did is all for naught?
Yeah. So that's a common misconception.
Oh God, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean
was
to go into another.
Okay. So that was something I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, there's a lot of space in between.
Exactly.
The merging of two galaxies is not suddenly going to be like massive number of collisions of planets and stars.
It's true to say that the Milky Way will be destroyed. It's not true to say that life within the Milky Way will be affected, because the Milky Way is in a certain form. It's a spiral galaxy, right? And that form will be disrupted. That's all that's being said when they say the Milky Way will be destroyed. But ultimately, the planets and the stars and the solar systems will continue effectively exactly as they are, because they're not going to be hitting other stars, like Kenny said, due to the distances between them. When these galaxies merge, they're just going to pass right through each other. And the two galaxies will form a new supercluster, a new big galaxy.
It would be bad news for the planets or stars near the center.
Because more likely to collide?
More likely of, I would say, tidal forces, as you have two, because the centers are quite massive.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they're going to need to coalesce. So there's, but
like some stars might get thrown out into the void, but ultimately the only thing that will be affected is, let's say that we know what star we're closest to. So we set up a base of humanity on that star we're closest to. And right now we're 2 light years away from the nearest star, right? And so that's not too bad. We can create a base there. But then when the merge happens, it might throw those stars a lot farther apart from each other. But the individual solar systems will remain intact. So Earth isn't going to be destroyed. The sun isn't going to be destroyed. Our solar system is going to continue as it is. It just might change in its relative position.
How long is our sun supposed to last?
Yeah, I was also thinking.
Isn't it similar?
Our,
like 4
our
billion
sun's
years or
just
something?
gonna die out anyway.
Anyways, that's probably the more immediate problem if you're in the time scale.
Immediate, yeah.
If you were to look at the time scale of galaxy colliding or star dying.
I don't think anything's going to stop human civilization, other than if we can spread out to other stuff. It's not like, oh, well, we can spread as far as the whole galaxy, but then our galaxy's being destroyed anyway, which is kind of what was presented at the end of the speech. I think if we survive 4 billion years and we've spread out to our galaxy, the new galaxy coming in will just be, it'll be like a gold mine
Fresh meat.
of new planets and new resources. Like they'll be waiting on that collision, being like, "Hey, this is awesome for our civilization," So
new planets and new stars.
yeah, it'll be great. So really, our life in the universe can exist until the big freeze, like for billions and billions and trillions of years, until all the stars die out effectively, assuming that we can avoid extinction. So
Was that what you wanted to clarify?
Yeah, the Andromeda
correct?
galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy hitting each other isn't
From
going
the top,
isn't
that's
going
what
to
you wanted to correct?
because at the end he implied that okay, how long can humanity survive, and he set 4 billion years as the end game. Like, we can survive 4 billion years max, and that's when our galaxy's getting obliterated. But that's a misconception. We can continue to exist after that. And I shared a video which will be in the link to further that claim.
Okay, I think that's all the topics we have for today. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we will check you guys out in the next episode. See ya.
Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
God, I did not contribute.